Alright, today we're just gonna kick it off right off the bat. None of that extra BS. So, we're on Warlock using the Sunbracer's bottom tree solar. Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise. Using the mods Elemental Charge, Elemental Ordnance, Heavy-Handed, Supercharged, as well as Energy Converter. Main premise of the build is to throw as many grenades as we possibly can while at the same time have amazing ability regeneration for our melee, which in turn helps us get a bunch of super energy due to Ashes of Assets as well as Energy Converter. Supercharge is going to allow us to have more Charge of Light stacks, and our Elemental Well mods are going to be getting us Charged of Light so that we can constantly spam Heavy-Handed as well as Energy Converter. Alright, to kick today's video off, we're actually going to start off with going over the Sunbracers and why we're actually running Bottom Tree Void. So, these Sunbracers, what it does, basically whenever we get a kill with our melee ability, we're going to be able to throw tons and tons and tons of grenades over and over and over again. And due to those constant grenade throws, we're going to be getting super energy back constantly due to Ashes of Assets, which gets us super energy on grenade kills. Now with this in mind, we want to use a super that's going to be doing a bunch of ad clear and can last a long time. This build is more of a super aggro build instead of using a sort of passive sort of setup like Well of Radiance, so that is why we're going to be using Bottom Tree Solar. Top Tree doesn't really have a long lasting super, nor does it really do any damage, but Bottom Tree has the perks Faded for the Flame as well as Everlasting Fire, which will help our super last longer as well as do way more damage to ads and clear them out instantly, super fast. Like I said earlier, the main premise is to throw as many grenades as we possibly can to get as much super energy as possible, and then spam our super as soon as we get it to clear out any ads that are in the vicinity. Next up, we're going to go over the mods. First ones that I want to go over are the Elemental Well mods. So, to start things off, Elemental Ordnance, the main mod of the entire build, pretty much. Defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an Elemental Well that matches your subclass energy type. This is going to be meshing everything together and going to be allowing us to perform whatever we can with this setup. Now, if you don't want to use Elemental Ordnance to become Charge of Light, I'd recommend using something that can get you Charge of Light very consistently, like Elemental Ordnance when using the Sunbracers. For example, if you're going to be using a grenade launcher, Blast Radius is an amazing Charge of Light mod to use to become Charge of Light. But on the subject of actually using Elemental Ordnance, we're going to be getting Charge of Light because of Elemental Charge. So whenever we pick up those Elemental Wells spawned by Elemental Ordnance, Elemental Charge is going to be getting us those Charge of Light stacks. We get 2 of them every single time we pick up an Elemental Well. By the way, all that stuff that I said about becoming Charge of Light, disregard what I said about Ordnance and replace it with Elemental Charge, since Elemental Charge is actually going to be the mod that's getting you Charge of Light. And with that in mind, we're using all those Charge of Light stacks with Energy Converter in mind. And with Supercharge in mind, we're getting all those Charge of Light stacks because of one of our mods called Energy Converter. Now with this, the more stacks of Charge of Light you have, the more super energy you get whenever you throw a grenade when your super energy is below 50%. So say I'm only able to have 2 stacks of Charge of Light. Our super returns whenever we throw a grenade when we're Charge of Light will be the minimum. So I'd recommend trying to get at least 4 stacks of Charge of Light when using Energy Converter. Of course you can use 5, but I for one did not want to replace any of my other mods to get that extra 5th stack of Charge of Light, so I'm going to be running 4 with Energy Converter. Now while using Energy Converter, make sure that you have 4 stacks of Charge of Light whenever you use your super, so that as soon as your super ends, you can throw your grenade and immediately get a good amount of super energy back whenever you throw your grenade. And finally, the last Charge of Light mod, Heavy-Handed. This is pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. Whenever we're Charged with Light, we regain half of our melee energy. Now basically, we want to have our melee back as constantly as we possibly can, so that is going to be the main subject in terms of our mods when regaining abilities back, as well as whenever we're focusing into our stats, we want to focus on strength, since we want our melee back as quickly as we possibly can, because that is going to be how we throw constant grenades over and over again due to Sunbracers. The more melee abilities we have, the more grenades we have. And once again, with that in mind, we're using Perpetuation, reduces class ability cooldown when using your class ability. Of course, using Outreach would probably be a better option because it reduces melee cooldown when using your class ability, but I was kind of stuck using this Void Bond because it was the only thing I could run with Energy Converter without having to spend massive amounts of resources, which I already did. Look at this, I'm broke. And another mod you can run that will make your melee regeneration come back way faster is a mod called Momentum Transfer. Causing damage with a grenade reduces your melee cooldown. This is absolutely massive when getting your melee cooldown back. If you're using Momentum Transfer, you don't even need to use Outreach or any other melee regeneration mod, but just because I like to play it safe, I'm going to be using Heavy-Handed, and it really doesn't hurt because we're always getting Charge of Light due to the amount of wells that are on the ground. Alright, now that we got mods out of the way, let's go on to our weapons. Honestly, for your weapons, just go with whatever weapon set that suits the activity that you're going to be running into. The main premise of this is to get melee kills and then throw tons of grenades, so your weapons don't really matter. So swapping your weapons in and out, depending on the activity, varying if you need like overload shots, bots, anti-barrier, or even unstoppable rounds. You can mix and match depending on what you need. For example, I'm using the Ariana's Vow to deal with barrier champions, and I'm also going to be using my Fatebringer to deal with the Overload champions. Ariana's Vow is a great pickup if you don't have it already. It does tons of damage to barrier champions and even just high tier enemies. It does great damage. And lastly, this is my rocket launcher that I'm going to be using to basically finishing off enemies and doing my massive boss damage as well. Has lasting impression and overflow. Beautiful rocket launcher. Highly suggest trying to get it if you can. And yeah, that's pretty much it for weapons. Moving on to stats, the final thing about this build. So 100 strength, that's pretty much it. Like I said earlier, you want to have as much strength as you can to get your melee back as much as you possibly can. And with 100 strength, the returns that you get for your melee ability it's pretty significant. If you don't want to run 100 strength, 100 recovery is always a good option. If you're feeling a little cheeky, 100 mobility doesn't hurt. And of course, speccing a little bit into resilience isn't all that bad either. I wouldn't recommend speccing into discipline or intellect, although you can run intellect if you want, but if you're going to try to run intellect, I'd recommend just going with Font of Wisdom instead. But yeah, no discipline because we have Sunbracers, and no intellect because we have Ashes to Assets. But you can go intellect if you want, by all means, if you want. All right, and with that being said, that is the build. Whew. Warlocks, I hope this one is all right. I really want to do more builds, but it's getting a bit difficult at this point because my Glimmer is, it's going on a little bit of a shortage. And due to Bungie making the artifact keep growing with Glimmer over and over again whenever I reset it, that isn't helping. Look at that, 100,000. God damn. But yeah, it's a struggle. That's why I'm so broke. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Let me know if you want me to make a Titan build, Hunter build, Warlock build, although Hunter builds, it's a bit rough right now, especially with GMs, but I'll see what I can do. I'll see you guys in the next one. Follow my Twitter, Twitch, and make sure to subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.